So Sarah Kate, great to have you here on the Novartis campus. Wonderful to be talking to you again about diversity, inclusion. How has the movement been developing in your view?
In the corporate world, it's been moving at lightning speed, fortunately. Edelman comes out with the trust barometer annually. And what they said this past year was that for the first time, they've seen a major shift that employees have more trust in their companies than in their government systems.
Wow.
So they're looking to their employers for leadership in more ways than just how to do X job. And so I think that CEOs and executives have taken that charge very seriously and are leading in ways that they've never dreamt of leading before.
Now, when you think about corporations, what do you see as kind of the best practices?
Yeah, I think there are two ways to look at it. There's the internal facing, right? Making sure that your policies, whether or not you cover trans employees and their transitions, what does it look like for leave, parental leave, all of those types of things, adoption, is that covered under parental leave? So there's a host of ways internally just to get the shop in order, if you will. And then I think there's an external factor, and that is, where do you stand as a company on decisions that the government is making in certain places in the world? And so there's multiple ways for companies to get involved. I think the first thing to do is to get your own house in order.
Yeah, that's been a big focus for us. You know, we've embraced the LGBTI UN standards. We've announced a equal parental leave policy around the company. I've had the opportunity to meet a number of LGBTI associates at Novartis, and it's striking all of the little ways that we perhaps unintentionally create environments of discrimination. So it feels like to me, on the one hand, there's the big standard setting, but then there's lots of kind of almost micro things you have to keep thinking about.
Absolutely. They're called microaggressions, and people oftentimes don't even know that they're doing it. And we're just working under a system that we've grown up with, or that we've watched and then taken on ourselves. And we have to kind of rewrite the script now in this new day, in this new age. Talking about it is the first step in changing any culture, especially in terms of seeing little micro opportunities where there's transphobia or homophobia.
So what would be one thing you think associates or anyone watching this video might be able to do to help their own environment?
I think being an active ally by listening. And listening to your LGBTI associates or parents of kids who are gay or trans, and that will help you understand it better. So listen to other people's stories and then share your own if you have one. And I think that helps just to incrementally, slowly build a culture of inclusion and acceptance.
You know, I had a very close family member who transitioned, and watching the experience of my family member in the corporate world was quite striking. It was not something I had ever realized, watching the level of discrimination. You saw how much the corporate world is really living in a different era, in my view. And that really motivated me to think about how can we make Novartis an incredibly inclusive place. Because once you really see it firsthand, once you feel it firsthand, and I think it really motivates you to change, especially when you're in a position like I am.
Yeah, so before I was in the not-for-profit world, I was in the corporate world. I worked in the media world for 2 decades, and almost 1 decade, I wasn't out professionally. I was personally and to my family, but I absolutely thought that if I came out at work, it would hurt my chances of advancing. And I realized, right, by omitting pronouns or omitting what I was doing for the weekend, I saw myself as a liar, and that I couldn't be a leader who was lying. And so I did come out, and it was fairly smooth, but it had some bumps along the way. Not unlike you, as a parent, you know, you're thinking about what world are you leaving behind.
Sure.
And I thought it's so important that we leave them a better shot at this world than we had when we came into it. And so I've worked really hard to do that. And that's why this has always been really important to me.
Now, one of the things that I wanted to pick back up on is how do we tackle this globally in terms of the external world? It's one of the things that strikes me is we still have a world where so many countries actively and legislatively discriminate. One of the challenges we have as a big company is we want our policies to be consistent all around the world, but in some places we can't have that. I haven't figured out the right solution to navigate this. I was curious what have been your observations as corporations navigate this world?
It's very nuanced. I don't think there's a one size fits all in terms of looking at the global landscape. It's last I read it was 70 countries where it's illegal to be LGBTI, and in some of those countries it's punishable by death. And so it's a fine line that companies are walking. And I think what's really important is that within the walls of the company, that the employees know that they have a safe space. And I think even employees in those situations who might be hearing this conversation or see all the activity that Novartis is doing around Pride Month, it's very important that you're safe. Safety is first and foremost. And so if you do feel inspired to come out or to share your true and authentic self, please, I always say, make sure you're safe first, but visibility is so critical to our movement.
And I would just want to reiterate that. You know that Novartis supports you, but please be safe. That's the most important thing. When you look into the future, what is your feeling? Are you optimistic that we're going to get to a better place?
I am. I'm very optimistic, honestly. I'm just seeing so many companies across the world displaying rainbows and celebrating Pride. I am so inspired by that. I can't imagine having been my 20-year-old or 19-year-old self starting in the workforce and seeing that. So I think that there is a lot. I think, we're living in a climate and a culture that is normalizing hate. So it's not all rainbows right now at all, but we are seeing major steps forward. And I think that once things get righted a little bit better, we're going to see an incredible move forward.
There's two things that make me feel very, very optimistic. One, I was recently at a conference and I heard former President Obama speak. And what he pointed out was if you just go back not that long ago into the 1960s, we lived in a world of incredible discrimination. Oh, yeah. And so in the arc of history, 50 years later, we've come a long way. And when you're trying to transform society, you will have these moments where you'll have step backs. The key is that you fight hard during those moments when there is a step back. But I think we can do that. And I think now with your great work to recruit corporate leaders, business leaders to really lead the charge with you, I think we have the opportunity to push back and continue that arc of history. The other thing I'll say is whenever I talk to my boys, when you talk to them about discrimination, for them it seems like such a foreign concept. Why would anyone discriminate against anyone? And so it makes me hopeful that we can live in a world where our children just naturally have that. And how do we maintain that, of course, is the most important thing.
Agreed. I completely agree. My kids are the same way. They just doesn't even make sense to them. It doesn't register to them.
That's a beautiful thing.
It is amazing. Yeah. If we can bottle that and keep it.
That would be the great thing.
It would.
Well, thanks a lot for coming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.